Hello and welcome to the Palsy Podcast with me, Ciaran Fitzgerald. I'm a playwright, screenwriter, and podcaster from South Wales. And seeing as March is Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, to mark it, I've decided to interview interesting people who have cerebral palsy from Wales and beyond every day in March. If you like this episode, please stay tuned for more throughout the month and like and share. Now enjoy this episode of the Palsy Podcast. Hello and welcome to episode 27 of the Palsy Podcast. We're getting near the end of the month now. The Palsy Podcast is a podcast that I'm making during March to celebrate Cerebral Palsy Awareness Month, which is in March, and I'm interviewing interesting people every day who have lived experience of CP. If you've missed any of the episodes so far, you can listen back on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or watch on YouTube. And today I'm delighted to be joined by Richard Luke, who works for Scope. Hi Richard, how you doing, mate?
I'm fine, Ciaran. How are you?
Really good, thanks. Keeping myself busy this month, but I'm really enjoying it.
You
Uh,
certainly are.
I want to start this interview the same way I've started every episode of this podcast. Ask you what was your experience growing up with cerebral palsy?
Well, I always knew I was different to people
Mm.
in my family, and the childhood friends I had, but it was never really an issue. My mum, particularly, was very upfront and very direct with things, and how she would describe my cerebral palsy. Um, she had, well, when I was a teenager, she said, just because you're sitting on your ass doesn't mean to say you're not going to do anything. So, yeah, that's the kind of attitude that there was in my family. I think where it finally dawned on me that I was
Mm,
properly different to my peers was after I had a lot of surgeries. I had 26 surgeries on my legs and feet in, I think they call it year nine now. It was the third year when I was
yeah.
in school. And when I come back, I was more able to walk.
Mm,
I felt more vulnerable and fragile
that's interesting.
than I ever did before. Because before I used to play football, rough and tumble with my mates. But after I come back, even though I was more mobile, I felt more, yeah, fragile, vulnerable. And
And you couldn't play football like you would
no,
before that
no,
surgery.
no, oh my God, no, I was too scared. Yeah, so I didn't want to do WWF wrestling, football, rugby, hockey, and I remember one of my friends, he said, "You're not the same, Rich." And I tell you what, that
Ah.
was the moment where I thought, "What have I done all this for?"
Mm,
And then that led to other issues that I suppose it was with my own identity.
mm. And like, it's that thing of do you feel disabled? And like, presumably after the surgery, you felt more disabled than you did before it.
I did 100%, 100%.
And what was school like for you? Like, what was your experience at school? What were you good at? What did you enjoy?
At school, I enjoyed sports, I enjoyed English, I enjoyed creative stuff. Um, I couldn't stand maths. I've never been a maths guy, even though I'm fascinated by things like that now. I just didn't have a natural flair for it at all.
Mm.
Junior school was great. Had a blast. Secondary school was slightly different for the first 2 years. I got a lot of bullying. I got physically attacked for being
Oh God.
disabled on more than one occasion. One of the older kids said to my face, "We don't want an S word at our school."
Oof.
Yeah, oh, it was brutal, mate. And then I
Were you one of the only disabled kids in the school, do you think?
I was the only physically disabled kid in the school
Oh,
at that time. I was a guinea pig to go to a
right,
mainstream secondary school in Coventry.
right.
But then I met possibly the best group of people I've ever met. They're like family. They're not friends. They're like siblings to me. And we've been friends since we've been 11, 12 years old.
And like, how much did they help you? How much did they support you get through that time?
Oh, 100%. Because I think once people saw that um, people wanted to be my friend, that changed the
Mm.
whole way they perceived me and saw me. Um, and they just allowed me to be me. You know, we've had a couple of giggles with startle reflex and things like that. But because back then I didn't know what startle reflex was, I just thought I was a
Mm.
weirdo,
Oh God.
you know. And I'm sure there were other disabled children at the school, but even then, you know, if you were neurodiverse or ADHD, you were just classed as naughty.
They just call you naughty yeah,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
just didn't have the knowledge back then. And you were talking about it being like a trial period to put someone like you in mainstream.
yeah.
Like, did your parents have to fight for that?
Yes, they did. And I had a teacher um, that supported us as well. Because obviously I went for, not obviously you don't, but I went to mainstream junior school for year 6 and 7. But
Right.
then they kind of didn't know what they wanted to do with me because they always say, oh, we haven't got the infrastructure and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, I had a very supportive teacher. I had very supportive mum and dads. Um,
So were you in a additional needs school before that, before year 5 and 6? Yeah.
yeah, I did a couple of years at a special school, as we used to call it.
Was
Um,
that, did you find that frustrating? Like, what was that experience like?
yeah, I didn't like it. I've got to be honest, I didn't like it because I had non-disabled friends outside of school
Yeah.
where I lived on my street, and I saw what they were doing and what they were learning and what they were talking about. And there was just an assumption back then that because you went to a special school, you didn't want to follow academia, you didn't want to learn
Mm,
stuff. It was all about, learning, I don't know, not academic things anyway. I've got to be careful how I phrase it.
yeah. But like more practical stuff. And you, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it, Rich? But
Yeah,
you being academic, you being, I don't want to use the word clever because that is loaded and
yeah, yeah,
comes to all connotations, but the way in which your brain works was better suited to the
yeah.
mainstream school.
I think that it's not about being clever. I just really wanted to follow the curriculum that my friends were
Yeah,
doing.
yeah.
I was interested in what they were doing. So,
And like, how did it feel to then go into the mainstream? Was it a feeling of, right, I'm here now? Do you know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. When I went to year 5 and 6 at junior school, it was amazing. I really
Mm,
enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I enjoyed the structure, and the kids were great. I had no issues whatsoever in years 5 and 6, none at all, in terms of like discrimination or anything like that, which is rare in the 80s. But I loved it. I loved the pace of everything. And yeah, I
mm.
thought this is where I'm meant to be.
And then, like, what were you good at in school and secondary? What did you kind of think you could have a career in? Did you kind of have any idea what you wanted to do for
Yeah,
a
I
job?
wanted to be a sports journalist. I love
Right.
writing and I'm absolutely football mad. I'm sport mad. Football, rugby, boxing. I wanted to be a sports journalist.
Who'd you follow this
Oh, I'm
couple?
a Liverpool fan from my sins.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Dropped off a bit this season, Rich.
Oh, mate, I don't want to talk about it. I could
Do we
weep.
want to? So, like, was that journalism route not available to you? Was it not accessible at that time?
Well,
Like,
interestingly, and it leads on to I think a question you want to ask later.
mm,
I remember being at a UCAS event at my sixth form, first year of sixth form, and I was told in front of my peers that university wasn't a place for people like me.
oh my God.
Yeah, in front of everybody. So yeah, that really changed things for me mentally because I felt like I wasn't welcome, and I had nobody that I saw in real life or on the media who was disabled and going on to university. I didn't have a guide and in my family was very working class,
Yeah.
right? So university was for toffee nosed kids or people that were
Mm,
absolutely genius level academics, you know. So my mum wanted me to go to uni, but it wasn't really like as long as I was doing something, they
yeah.
were happy. So I went out and did college and worked instead.
What was your kind of first jobs like? What was your route into employment? Was it easy or were there challenges to it? Yeah.
My first ever job was at YTS,
Right.
a youth training scheme from Maggie Thatcher. And my first job was cleaning toilets in a local sports centre for 28 quid a week.
Oh my goodness, how did
Yeah,
like
but
going
you learn. I know
yeah.
it sounds horrendous, but you learn routine, you learn discipline. And even though 28 quid sounds like nothing these days,
Mm.
back then I was like, yes, mate, I've got some serious beer tokens here.
But did you ever feel when you were cleaning toilets on that way here, oh, I could be at university now, I should be at university now.
I did sometimes, and I've looked back, you know, particularly in my late teens, sort of early 20s, and thought maybe I could have. Um, But to be honest, I was just focused on what was in front of me and where I wanted to get to,
Yeah.
you know. And I think that I was going through changes myself as a young man, and
Mm.
I realised that if you're working and earning, opened more doors than if you went to
Mm.
uni back then. I mean, all of this is in the context of the time it was in, you know.
Yeah. So I guess we're talking Margaret Thatcher was in power, but
It was early 90s, yeah.
yeah,
It was early 90s, so
just
like
John
19,
Major.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I would have been what, 17, 18?
But like I'm gonna move on slightly. We're gonna come back to like employment and things like that when we talk about the work you do in scope. But I'm really interested in like how did you meet your partner? What was that like? How did you find like relationships and stuff growing up?
Oh, well, I met my partner in one of my family's pubs. Yeah, and yeah, we started out as friends. I think as a disabled man, you have to approach relationships slightly differently. You have to
Mm.
build a foundation of friendship first before they realise how hot you are. No, that's a joke. But yeah, that's how I try and approach it. It's like I want them to get to know the real me, you
Mm.
know, the warts and all stuff. I think that from an early age, I've always owned it and tried to own it. So I'm not. This is going to sound really conceited, but I never really had much of an issue
That's
meeting
good.
people and.
Like, I think, do you think confidence is a lot to do it? Being confident, owning yourself, and being comfortable in your own skin. Um,
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a huge, and that's not to say I've always been like this. I haven't. I've had, like we all have, had moments of really serious self-doubt. But I think
yeah,
I grew up going to raves and things, you know, when it was,
yeah,
and everybody just loved everybody, mostly because we were off our heads. But, you know, nobody cared what you looked like. Nobody cared
Yeah.
about your skin colour or whether you're in a wheelchair or it was just about the music and getting on. So I was around that type of person, you know?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And they were there for the same reasons that you were
Yeah,
there and you were into the same
yeah.
stuff.
So there was none of this. I think now we like to put people in little boxes.
Hmm.
You're in this box. So yeah, you go over here and you're in, but no, you're Ciaran, I'm Rich. We're not in a box. We're not confined.
I think this whole online dating stuff has complicated it massively in
Yeah,
terms of not to be thing, but my generation of like having to be on the apps and stuff and putting a picture of yourself out there which, may not be 100%.
yeah.
Like, it's made it more complicated, I think. In some ways, it might have been easier back in the 80s and 90s than it
I
is
agree.
now.
I would not want to date now. I have never used a dating app. Um, but I speak to young people regularly, and what you have to compete with is not just putting yourself across to somebody, it's dealing with I think, an unattainable image of perfection that
Mm,
everybody
yeah.
seems to have now. And it doesn't matter whether you're gay, straight, bi, whatever you are, that unattainable perfection is really, really problematic.
And it's not the reality because no one is leading these perfect lives. We're all flawed,
Yeah,
complex human beings.
yeah,
But it's that image that is put out there on social media, on these dating apps, which is difficult, I think.
yeah. Well, I'm very glad I'm old in some respects, Ciaran,
You know.
but yeah, mate, I think.
And like, do you think that people have got misconceptions about the prospect of dating disabled people? Or
Oh, absolutely. You know, for one, you know, I think that the non-disabled community, not all of them, but they homogenise us.
mm,
So one disabled person is very much like another, which couldn't be further from the truth. You know, if you're a wheelchair user, then obviously you're paralysed, so things are probably
yeah,
not as they
obviously,
should be, right? Well, we know that's not true.
yeah.
Or the whole disabled people don't have the same sexuality drives as the non-disabled community. And another big one for me, which we try to address I'm a member of SHADA, the Sexual Health and Disability Alliance, is
Mm,
the infantilization of disabled people.
mm.
So we've got a couple of, well, like a triple threat we have to deal with, you know.
And that can lead to like internalized ableism as well, and self-doubt and lack of confidence and not wanting to put yourself out there because it's hard. It's really difficult, I think.
For sure. I mean, we're seeing that as well in in a way with things like Louis Theroux has done inside the
Mm.
manosphere. And let me tell you, I speak to a lot of young men regularly who happen to live with cerebral palsy, and they very much display that sort of like, I'm never going to find a partner. I'm never going to have a family. I'm never going to be this. But this is the online world telling them that this is going to happen because you don't look a certain way.
How do we fight against that, Rich? How do we?
I think you need to be as nerve-wracking as it is. I think you need to be as visible as possible.
Yeah,
I think you need to challenge it at its source. I think you need to say, well, you can't homogenize people, you can't generalize people.
yeah,
You know, that would be me generalizing the whole non-disabled community for whatever reason. I think you
yeah.
have to challenge it and say no. I think the media needs to focus on disabled people, and I hate the term interabled relationships.
Oh my God,
It's
it's
disgusting
horrific.
because straight away it takes you back to the 80s when it was horrible or rare to have an interracial relationship. No, it's not horrible or rare. It's two humans that love each other. So
Mm.
if you give it a label, it sticks out more.
And a lot of people might say, oh, if your partner's not disabled, they've got to adapt to you. But also it's the other way around. You've got to adapt to them. You've got to learn about them, how they work, who they are as a person. You
Yeah.
know, it's not a sacrifice, it's not a burden. And yeah, I just like with many of these things I've talked about this month, it comes down to education, I think. And without trying to be preachy about it, um, like, have you and your wife experienced any ableism during your relationship?
Oh my God, loads. You know, not so much now, but people used to say, "Oh, nice that you bring him out," you know, and then what I'd do, we'd have a good old French kiss, do you know what I mean? And then they'd be
Yeah.
like, "Oh my God, I'm going to report you," and all this. And then she'd have people come up to her when we used to go clubbing and say, "Do you want to go home with a real man?" And all that
Oh,
sort of stuff.
God,
And she'd be
right.
like, "No, I'm going home with the real one, thanks," you know. And it's like all the standard stuff, but mainly the one that we used to get a lot is that my wife Natalie was my carer.
Yeah, that's really common, and I bet that's infuriating.
Yeah, I don't
Absolutely.
get it so much now. I look a bit older, but when I was younger,
Mm,
I
yeah,
think people struggle with younger looking people using mobility devices anyway.
yeah, I agree. I agree.
Um, but I think it throws the little brains of it. Yeah.
Yeah. And like in terms of you and Natalie having family, having children, what was that process like? And how did you adapt to being
Wow.
a dad?
Well, I don't think we're adopted yet, and she's
Yeah.
17 years old.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It was we've been married a long time. It was something we talked about, and we were trying for children. It never happened. Certain thing we had a miscarriage, blah blah blah, and we kind of put it to the back of our minds.
Yeah.
I don't mean blah blah blah. It was painful. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
skirt over it quickly.
Good.
Um, but then all of a sudden we had our daughter, and when we realised it wasn't, it wasn't a drill.
Yeah.
Well, when I realised, because my wife's always been the more sensible one, it really brought to the fore a lot of my internalised ableism. It really, really did.
In what way?
Oh gosh. Well, instead of thinking that I need to buy carry cots, bottle sterilisers,
Yeah.
all the practical things you need to be a dad, I was thinking, oh my God, I can't teach her how to ride a bike.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I can't help her learn to climb a tree. We're not going to run along the beach together. And I got into this absolute maelstrom in my head. And I've got to admit, for the first 7 months of our pregnancy, I didn't enjoy it at all because
No.
I was so wrapped up in how rubbish I was going to be as a dad that I didn't really enjoy the stuff. And
Mm.
also, I faced ableism when we went to antenatal classes. They didn't believe I was the dad.
That must have been hot, like, and that fed into your own
Yeah,
internalized ability, and like, your view, can you do? And I guess you didn't know disabled people. Did you know disabled people in similar situations should pick
I
up?
knew one disabled mum who had a
Yeah.
very different condition to me, but I didn't know any men who'd become
Mm.
fathers. That's all. And that is how I joined Scope as a volunteer, trying to find men in my position.
So how did you come to join Scope? Like, did you reach out to them? Like, did you
Yeah.
receive
Well,
support
I
from
hadn't
them?
wanted to go near Scope because of the name since
Yeah.
I was a kid. I was like, I
Yeah.
get called out at school enough, I don't need to hang out with you. You know, so but I got into this, like I said, this headspace I was in. So I thought I put in Scope because I knew the name had changed.
Yeah.
And I was working as an immigration officer at the time for a Russell Group University. But I was really like stuck and I was thinking, what can I do? And Scope had an online community, like a bulletin board, a forum.
Mm.
and I created an account and I started posting on there, but I was getting nothing back because there simply wasn't anybody in my position. So I started volunteering on there for an hour a day after I finished my day job to be the person I needed. And I learned so
Yeah.
much. I learned so much. Um, and
And
eventually, sorry,
and did supporting other people give you reassurance about your own situation?
yes, it did. I learned so much about cerebral palsy that I didn't know, not because my parents didn't tell me, but because we were never told.
No?
We were never
Well,
told by doctors. The doctors told my mum when I was diagnosed at the age of 3, put him in a home because my mum was really young,
right.
and she was like, "F that, mate. See you later."
Yeah, yeah.
But we were never told of like the startle reflex, the spasms, the swallowing issues I might
Mm,
have, the speaking issues I might have. So I was absorbing all this information with my non-disabled mask on at my
mm,
non-disabled job, becoming a dad. I'm thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. I'm learning all these things. But back to being a dad, it's the single best thing I've ever done. And I want to make clear your kid does not care whether you're in a wheelchair, wear AFOs, if you're jittery, if you have trouble speaking or swallowing.
mm,
Your kid loves you and wants love and time from you back. Doesn't
yeah.
matter what that time looks like. And that's the one thing I need to tell everybody because I ruined our pregnancy by thinking differently.
Mm. That was really powerful, Rich. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I hope that will have resonated with people maybe who are listening
Mm.
to that. And you're now the program lead for Cerebral Palsy for the charity Scope. So, can you talk a little bit about what your role involves?
Yeah, I can. So I've been at Scope for 8 years now.
Mm,
I applied for the job after being a volunteer, 4 years after. And my role is to look after Scope's legacy community, which is our community, the cerebral palsy community.
right.
Because as we know, Scope was a cerebral palsy charity. And what I do is I work with a helpline team. I do casework. I do referral work. I specialise in mental health and sexual health and relationships. Uh, I help with PIP support. You name it, I've done it.
Yeah.
It's a very broad role. I work with academics to further research into cerebral palsy. I
Mm,
use Scope's name to further research along. I'm in a very privileged position where my management team, you know, I say I want to do this, and they say, okay, how much? I'm very lucky. They're very supportive, and I don't think that's what people see because they see a big corporate charity. But
yeah.
we've Scope has paid for the All Party Parliamentary Group for Adults with Cerebral Palsy,
Mm,
which has started the work alongside the annual reviews. We were also part of the annual review design. I was a guinea pig, and that told me things I didn't want to know as I was getting older.
mm.
There we go.
So what progress have you made on that? Where are we with annual reviews, like, and stuff like that, and recognition of CP as a lifelong condition? Like,
I think we're a lot further down the road than we were 8 years ago. I
yeah.
think that we're getting the research is about collating evidence. It's about collating a body of evidence. So
Mm,
it's not one standalone piece. Okay. Now we know it's a lifelong condition. Unfortunately, the NHS is like the biggest oil tanker in the world, and it takes years to turn it around. So now we've got the NHS referring to cerebral palsy as a child onset condition,
right.
which means you have access to other services. Because I don't know about you, I didn't hit 18 and all of a sudden I was playing for Liverpool.
No, I wish I could have been playing for the Swans, but that didn't happen.
No, well, exactly. So we need to let them know that it's
Yeah.
lifelong. You know, I've worked with some absolutely brilliant academics
Mm,
in my time. We've covered things about sexual health and women and girls with cerebral palsy because access to mammograms and pap smear tests for females in our community is so low. Not because they're not
mm,
interested, the infrastructure, the understanding's not there.
yeah.
We've done a big piece with the University of Nottingham into ageing and cerebral palsy. We've done a big piece with Surrey about the eating and drinking classification system because who knew the older we get, our swallow function changes.
That's something I've experienced in the last couple of years. My
So,
soul
yeah,
has increased, which is really scary. Like, and having to build it back up and like use different strategies is really difficult. But I didn't know that was going to happen to me. Eh,
no, neither did I. I'm completely the same as you, Ciaran. About 2 years ago, I started having real issues. And I thought, oh, what's going on here?
And like that, like coupled with like anxiety around eating, am I going to choke? What's going to
Yeah,
happen? Like just some reassurance of this might happen
yeah.
might make that a little bit easier to deal with. Yes.
Well, I think forewarned is forearmed in a way, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
I think with the whole getting older process with our wonderful condition, I think you can start to prepare for it. But if you don't know about it, you've got no chance.
no, no. I think the professionals said, "Oh, it doesn't get worse," but with the impact of aging,
Yeah.
certain things do get more challenging.
They do.
Eh,
But the fundamental issue we've got here and with the NHS is, and I'm going to say this, because non-disabled people can't acquire it in the way they can acquire multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's,
mm,
it is not the same level of priority. So that is the ableism that is inherent in our
mm,
health system. Because if people who are non-disabled could acquire cerebral palsy, even though we all start off as non-disabled, then
yeah.
there would be a very different attitude.
Do you think it's that thing of it can't happen to me? But also that thing about it's one thing. Like cerebral palsy is this. The understanding that people have of CP might be the one person with CP that they know, and everyone with CP is affected differently. Do you think that's part of the problem?
Yeah, I think it is part of the problem. I think, and I work a lot with medical professionals, so it's not me having a dig at them. I think with our condition, I think that you get a perfect storm, if I can describe the scenario. So you or I will go to the GP, we'll say there's something going on, and they'll say, oh well, of course it is. It's it's this, you're getting older with CP. The solution is very woolly, okay? Doesn't work.
Mm,
So then you don't go back to the GP again, right?
yeah.
Until you're in crisis, okay?
Mm,
GPs say, oh well, we don't see a lot of people with cerebral palsy. That's because we've given up.
mm,
We've given up and we self-manage in whatever way that looks like. You know, I did a piece of work some years ago. On average, each GP surgery in the UK should have at least 4 patients living with some form of cerebral palsy. That's not an insignificant
no,
number.
no. But and yet the access to services isn't there. People are not getting the support they need.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you're trying to get physio, trying to get speech and language therapy on the NHS,
yeah,
unless they can see a visible improvement, make you better.
yeah.
They don't want to know a lot of the time.
No, we need to replicate the MS clinics.
Right.
We need cerebral palsy centres across the country that follow the blueprint of the MS clinics, and that is what we're going to work towards. But it's going to be holistic. mental health is a massive issue in our
Mm,
community,
yeah.
Kieran. And it's not not because we're disabled, it's because we function in a system that is against us for the word go, whether that's employment, schools, health systems, just society, and it's going to take its toll.
And do you think if more people understood the social model, do you think things would be easier? Do you think people would be more able to make things more accessible?
I think that if we made more of the psychosocial model,
Yeah.
um, we'd be in a better place. But definitely the social model, w- it's whether people actually see that as disabled people we're worth it. We've got to show them we're
Mm.
worth it. And I know it shouldn't be incumbent on us, but sometimes you've got to do the hard yards because people are they're not very bright most of the time. So you've got to lead them
Mhm.
by the hands and say, look, this is why
Yeah.
this is wrong. I don't think there's any malice to them, but they just don't think deeply.
No, because maybe they haven't come across it, maybe it's not a lived experience, they don't know. And maybe they're
Yeah,
scared of saying the wrong thing. Or, well, scared of doing the wrong thing.
absolutely. So that's why, it's the age-old thing when somebody says, oh, what's happened to you then? Now, some
Mm.
people can get offended by that, and I totally get it. But to me, I think, right, this is an education moment.
An opportunity, but yeah, like I think what you're saying is it shouldn't be a responsibility for us to educate people, but yeah, don't be afraid
Exactly,
to, yeah. And
exactly.
with scope, you've set up adult support groups across the UK. Can you talk about these support groups and how people can get involved?
Yeah, so as a response to the pandemic, we created a thing called Network CP, which is the name of all of Scope's CP work. It's Network CP, to address directly the isolation and fear that the community were facing at the time.
Mm.
And that has carried on. And now I'm joined by my wonderful teammates, Sarah in Wales, and Lucy up in the north. You know Sarah well.
Sarah
Um,
was on the podcast earlier in the month.
yeah, she was excellent as always. Um, we've set up different groups in different areas of the country, and you can access that by searching CP Network Scope, and you can sign
Mm.
up there. We're trying to get more and more groups together, but as you know, transport as a disabled person cannot
Yeah.
always be achievable. So we're looking into more hybrid meetings. People have said they want face to face,
Yeah.
but then when it comes to getting to the locations that we find as changing places, toilets, etc., it's not always easy, as you know yourself.
It's very
Uh,
difficult. Like, so are you kind of employing like a hybrid model?
yes, yes,
Somewhat.
going forward, I think hybrid works for more people because not only is transport, but sometimes we're shattered.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're like, oh God, can I just click a button and just sit there with my camera off and listen to my people talk?
Mm.
You know, and that's what CP Network is. You can be as engaged or as passive as you want to be. You haven't got to
Yeah.
come with smart answers. You can just be with people that get you. That's all it is.
That's so important sometimes, being around people who get it, who understand, who don't have to explain stuff
Yeah.
to, because that can take a lot of energy as well.
Oh yes.
And energy conservation for us is so crucial.
It
Like, so
really
if
is.
people want to get involved, how can they get involved?
Okay,
Also,
so Google search or other search engines are available. CP Network at Scope, you can join there, and then you will get newsletters. You'll get a Zoom link to the monthly meetings. I'm reachable at Scope anytime you need. So richard.luke@scope.org.uk. I will support you with any questions that you might have or any support you might need. I'm also in a lot of CP groups on Facebook.
Mm.
Sarah and Lucy are also available. But just, I think the message is don't sit there on your own and stew over it. Ask somebody.
Yeah, and having people with that lived experience who've been through it, who know
Yeah,
what it's like, is really beneficial as well. I will share links to the things that you've mentioned in the description of this
thank you.
episode. If you can send them over to me, Rich, I'll stick them in the description. Um, Rich, it's been lovely talking to you. Thank you for your time. My last question for you is, what is one thing that you wish people knew about CP?
One and a half things.
Only one. Well, no, go on, one and a half. I'll give you one and a half.
I wish people realised how different CP is for everybody.
Mm.
And my half a thing is, and how vibrant and talented we are as a community. And we are we're an untapped resource.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if I've learned anything from the last 2.5 weeks, it's the diversity, the vibrancy, the talent, the passion of all these different people I've spoken to, and it's been an absolute privilege to meet new people doing really cool things all across the UK and beyond. So, yeah,
I've enjoyed listening to your podcast as well. They've been really, really professional and entertaining.
thank you so much, Rich, and thank you for joining me today. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure.
And thank you for listening to this episode of the Palsy Podcast. We've got a couple of days left in March. We're into the last week, but I'll be continuing to release episodes every day for the rest of March. So please like and subscribe and share with people who you think might be interested in this. If you've got CP and you've got people around you who don't really get it and don't really understand, maybe send them an episode of this to listen to. It might help them, understand a bit better. But please stay tuned for more episodes between now and the end of March. But for now, it's goodbye from me and goodbye from Rich. Goodbye!
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Palsy Podcast with me, Ciaran Fitzgerald. I want to thank my guests for joining me, and I hope that you'll stay tuned for the next episode and more throughout March. Thank you.